Welcome to my shop. My name is Steve, and in this video I'm going to cover how I set up the saw and the considerations I used to build the shadow lid box. This is part of the playlist series that provides more details on this box build. So let's get over to the workbench and then the saw. Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to get a good miter or bevel cut on your box corners. It should be closed and tight all the way top to bottom. You should have no openings at the point, no openings on the inside corner. That's the objective, and that's what I'm going to cover in this video, how to achieve that. The first and most important step, and this is leftover stock, I'm actually going to use this to demonstrate the methods to achieve that tight joint. The first step is to have all the cup and bow out of your boards. They have to be straight, they have to be uniform thickness and uniform width. These have been milled and hand planed to remove all the milling marks. The grooves have been cut for the lid, the top, and the bottom. And the most important thing is they're flat. They're absolutely flat and uniform thickness. If you don't start there, there's no way you're going to get a good outside corner on your box. To get the best possible bevel or miter on your box corners, you need to provide some means to control the chip out that you'll get. And this is a piece of pine that I used as a chip out block on the Fritz and Franz jig. I'll get to the saw, I'll show you how I do that. If you use a table saw, and I used a table saw for 25 years, that's no big deal, and in some respects this is actually easier on a table saw, because if you use a sled you'll have a built-in zero clearance insert, so it will control the chip out. So that handles the side where the blade exits on the box lid, but I've got this groove down the middle, and in this area right here, if you're not careful, or depending upon the wood, you can get chip out there. Well, that's going to stick out like a sore thumb on the box, because this will show on the outside. So what I've got, and you've seen this before in in the main video, I have these spacers that I use to check for alignment, and also I use these for tear out of this. Now this groove, my standard is 5 millimeters. If you choose something different, that's fine. It's whatever works best for you. But I have pieces that I can fit in there, and you can see it's fairly easy to slide. But the joint is, you can just feel there's just a little bit of wiggle room. I'm going to use this piece as a tear out here, but if I just stick it in there, I don't want to be holding this when it passes the blade. What I like to do is take a small piece of paper and I'll just wrap it around, and this will be a very tight fit. So this is, I'll put this in the groove, and I can't really move that easily by hand. If I push real hard or pull up like this, I can get it out. But that will secure that spacer in the groove and control chip out for the box lid. So I'm at the sliding table saw now. A fine crosscut blade is installed, and the blade is tilted to 45 degrees. The more accurate you are on this bevel, the better off you'll be. I like to reference that blade tilt from the surface that my workpiece will be laying flat on. If you don't have one of these, or don't have a saw that will do this by itself, I recommend a digital angle gauge. This is my Fritz and Franz jig. If you don't have a slider, you won't be using one of these jigs. I would suggest using a table saw with a specific sled for this 45 degree bevel. This piece of oak, and it does stand proud of the stop block. And all this stop block is used for is to hold that chip breaker in position. The next step that I use is I don't even have the stop block on the infeed side of this, but the first thing I want to do is cut the wild side miters, and I'm just going to cut them all. The way I do that, I'll pull the slider back. To make sure that I'm getting enough offcut, I'll take one of the other pieces that's the same thickness, and I'll just position it up against my Fritz and Franz jig, and then I know that's where I will get a complete miter cut on this piece, and then I will just take the Fritz and Franz jig, and this clamps the piece together. I have several videos on this Fritz and Franz jig and how to use it, and if you're interested in that, have a slider. I think this is the most useful jig I've ever used on this saw. If you use a standard table saw with a sled, I highly recommend using hold down clamps, because these are getting pretty small, and you're probably not guarded, and you just need to keep your hands well away from the blade. I'm back from the sliding table saw with the Fritz and Franz jig. I've completed beveling the corners for the sides of the boxes. I've got nice tight miter joints, top and bottom, and the joints are uniform on along the points. And I also have no chip out on any of the box pieces.